You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Wednesday. We are back in doing it, and I don't know why I'm sitting like this. My chair is like sitting all like backwards or whatever. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. I still don't have much of a voice, but the coughing hopefully won't happen. I don't have a drink here to keep me safe, so let's do it. It's been like, I feel like it's been like since mid-season. I've been sick since mid-season. It's not good. Not great. Anyway, so we were going to continue on our trajectory with the spring football preview. We are going to take a break from that today. We're definitely taking a break from that tomorrow, maybe even on Friday. We might push back the mailbag even to Friday, depending on what we have with the press conference tomorrow, as well as the basketball team. So, which, annoyingly, is around the same time as each other. Good job coordinating Michigan football and Michigan basketball. But today, I want to go over some things that I wrote about on Wolverines Wire. Because there was a lot, the Cornelius Johnson stuff. He spoke to John Jansen on the In the Trenches podcast, and he talked about the Ohio State touchdown, for instance. And then ironically enough, I came across a Cleveland.com article coming out of the Combine about Cameron Brown, the cornerback from Ohio State. I'm going to lead off with this, and we'll get to the other topics that I'll discuss when we get there. Because it's really funny. Now, some of the stuff that was said was somewhat ascribed to Brown without being in the quote. So let me pull this up to make sure that I have at least what was reported. So the story was about how Michigan and Ohio State players were getting along at the Combine, and that there was no like bad blood, and they, were able to kind of, put the rivalry aside in order to just like support each other at this event. And you had one player, I can't remember who, said, I don't want to talk about them at his podium session. When it gets to Cameron Brown, and I quote, this is the article, and I'll make sure you know when the actual quote is. Brown had plenty to say into his when pondering the rivalry's return next season. He said that the Michigan players, quote, can't talk to me much, end quote, implying that the Wolverines still aren't on his level despite claiming 2 straight wins. And watching Michigan celebrate, both like it had won something bigger than one game, parading around the field, planting their flag at midfield in Columbus, struck Brown as funny. Quote, they won 2 games in the last 15, end quote. Brown said, quote, they got it. They can have that, end quote. So, I mean, there's a lot of context added by Cleveland.com, and I think that's important to note, because you have this whole Michigan still isn't on his level despite 2 straight wins, watching Michigan celebrate. Like, none of that was actually said in this quote, but the can't talk to me much was a quote. And in the non-quote about Michigan not being on his level. Why is this funny? And like that's funny to him that Michigan, according to Cleveland.com, that Michigan was out there celebrating and all of that. That's funny to him. Now, keep in mind, Cameron Brown is technically 2-2 against Michigan. He played in the 2019 game, didn't have great scores in that game. If I recall, actually, I think I'm not thinking of that one. I'm thinking of 2021. Sorry. So he was at least on the team. I don't know if he played in the 2019 game, but he was on the team in 2019. In 2021, because keep in mind, they didn't play in 2020. He did not have good scores, according to PFF. What's more, he is responsible for the biggest highlight in that game, which was him going down to tackle Hassan Haskins and Hassan Haskins hurtling over him in a must tackle situation at that point in the game. That play is emblematic of that game. That is the highlight that everyone is going to remember above all else, even though it wasn't a touchdown, from that game. So, negative 1 point, one demerit to Cameron Brown. The second point is he also didn't really have a very good game in 2022. Because in 2022, he had a middling PFF score. It was like 64.9 for the game defensively overall. But he had a tackling score in the 40s. And I wonder what could have prompted that. Oh, wait, on Michigan's first touchdown, when J.J. McCarthy was being flushed back in the pocket and made what looked like a desperate check down in the flat to Cornelius Johnson. Cornelius Johnson had to break two would-be tacklers. One who had him dead to rights. Who do you think that was? It was Cameron Brown. Michigan players can't say anything to him. He's still riding high from all the successes he didn't have. So I think that is hilarious because that might not be the emblematic play of that game, but that was when the floodgates started opening. Michigan wasn't getting much accomplished before that Cornelius Johnson first touchdown. The second touchdown was Cameron Martinez, the Muskegon native, being out of position. And then, there were other players involved at different positions. Wasn't Cameron Brown on Colston Loveland? I'd have to go back and rewatch the whole game to see if there were any other bad moments for him. But maybe if you are essentially the face of why things didn't go well for you, for your team, in the two losses you had, it's probably not a good thing to cast these types of to have this kind of pride. So like on the, when I'm writing these articles, I have to do like a little tagline that shows up on like the Wolverines Wire social media. If you were wondering who writes those, for my articles, I write them. For Trent's articles, he writes them. So like if you're on Twitter or Facebook and you see like, the tagline, like the body of it above the article, I'm the one who writes those for my articles. Might be out of character for the type of things that, the way that things are posited, but that's by design. But like on that one, I use the Kendrick Lamar line. Sit down, be humble. Because listen, my guy, your whole team lost, in both years, but you are probably the most recognizable face as to why the defense did not succeed against Michigan. That would be like Ronnie Bell after the 2019 Penn State game, coming out and being like, I just think it's funny that they're celebrating this win. Like, bro, I mean, he wasn't the reason they lost, but he's the face of why they lost that game, right? And obviously everybody kind of came together to like cheer him after that. Even us in the media, I'd say we did, because he's a good dude. But, any time that someone has a very visible mistake, let alone two in consecutive years, that play a part in costing you the game, sit this one out. Have some grace, man. Just be like, well, they won it. Hopefully we get them again next year, instead of being like, they can't talk to me. And then relying on what those before you did. Why the arbitrary 15 years? They won 2 games in the last 15. Why not go 25? Why not go 30? Why not go series record? Because he knows that makes him feel good, right? You could be like, hey, we're 5-2 against them. We're 7-2 against them. You go back long enough, you realize that doesn't work. Because guess what? Michigan is 2-0 against the Ohio State Buckeyes and hasn't lost a game against them in, 1,000 plus? I'd have to look at the countdown clock. It's been a while. It's been since that wintry day in 2019 in Ann Arbor. All right, we're going to continue on here in just a moment. We've got some more topics. I want to get to some of these transfer things because ESPN ranked, did like their top 75 transfers. That came out yesterday. And then today, 24/7 Sports released their updated transfer portal rankings. Definitely some discrepancy between them, but I've got some thoughts. Before we do that, the midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, super easy, and secure and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores to threes claimed. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner with the NBA. All right, if I cough here pretty early on, I mean, you won't hear it because I'll mute it after the fact, but I should have done it during the breaks. I'm like fighting it off. The fun part of doing these, and I keep all of these. I try to make this feel like radio. You know, I don't like to mute things if I don't have to. I don't like to go back and edit things if I don't have to. I want it to be spur of the moment. I want it to feel like you're sitting here with me. That's always been by design since very early in the show. So we keep it that way. I want you to feel like you are sitting in that chair right where the camera is. So that is the goal. Anyway, let's get to these transfer portal rankings. So 24/7 Sports updated theirs. But before we get to that, I do want to do the ESPN top 75. So they got 4 guys in. I don't necessarily agree. Like, I understand 75. That's not a huge number considering the amount of guys out there. But it's big enough where it's impressive that Michigan got 4 of the 7 incoming transfers on the list. But certainly big discrepancies between how ESPN and 24/7 Sports sees it, which, I mean, 24/7 Sports has been king of the mountaintop for a very long time, and there's a reason why. So I would take them above all. But there are some guys that made the cut and others that didn't. And I would advocate for a couple of the guys who didn't make the cut. We'll get to them in a moment. They would have made the cut, I believe, in the 24/7 one. But so the 4 guys by ESPN are number 22 overall, Ernest Hausman, linebacker from Nebraska. Number 26, edge rusher Josiah Stewart, out of Coastal Carolina. I already said edge rusher. Number 57, offensive tackle Ladarius Henderson from Arizona State. Number 74, Miles Hinton, offensive tackle from Stanford. So Miles Hinton slides in there, and keep in mind he's a former 5-star, and it's one of those things where it's a blessing for Michigan to get him. I mean, he didn't set the world on fire in Palo Alto, but he has that talent and physical traits that you can't teach. And now Stanford's been a struggling program the last several years, and even their offensive line, when they've gotten guys, have not necessarily panned out the way that you would hope. So it makes sense that he would be thought of as being a high-end prospect here. Ladarius Henderson's, I thought, rated a little too low at 57. Kind of a mauler, kind of perfect for what Michigan wants to do. I think if he was at a bigger school than Arizona State, he would have been looked at much differently. Josiah Stewart, I think, is somewhat underrated, but I mean, he didn't have the most explosive 2022 compared to his 2021. He had like 2.5 sacks last year, and 3.5 sacks, but he had 12.5 the year before. So we'll see. You think he's probably pretty good. And then Hausman obviously has been the star of them all. So I think it's a fair list. They've got a lot of guys like Sam Hartman above them. Obviously the Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders are the guys that are rated much higher generally on their list. And it makes sense. They're the big names, and they're coming with Dion, and then they were already big time recruits and all of that. So you're going to look at them in that light. I think that the Drake Nugent erasure is despicable. I'm speaking way too hyperbolically there, but it's Drake Nugent, I think, should be much higher up. I think he's going to be in the running for the Remington. Do I think he's as good as Olu? No. Do I think he's as good as Andrew Vistardis? Yes. I think he's right in between those two somewhere. And I think he's going to earn that starting job, and I think he's going to really surprise people. That's my takeaway from Drake Nugent. Now we'll see. I was right last year about Olu. Around this time, I had predicted Olu would win the Remington, and that happened. But I'm sure that if you go back to my bold predictions, 10 bold predictions every couple months leading into the season, as we revise things, as we learn more from spring ball and all of that, it always seems like, you hit on a few and you miss on a lot more. That's just the nature of it. And it's always funny because you get months later, I get people being like, but you said. It's going to make me cough. Yeah, I did say. But that didn't mean that that was 100% going to happen. There's no sports writer that is prognosticated to that level. Zero. Otherwise, they wouldn't be a sports writer. They would be doing things in Vegas, solving the cough issue, hopefully. So 4 in the top 74, 2 in the top 30, top 26, and then 2 in the bottom end. So let's go to 24/7 Sports here, because they have, I forgot offhand what they were. But remember, at the time that Ernest Hausman had committed to Michigan, he was the #1 overall prospect in the transfer portal, according to 24/7 Sports. He was only usurped by Travis Hunter, and that remains true. He's still #2, according to 24/7 Sports with their re-rank. So that's big. I will say this. I don't know where everyone ranked beforehand at this point. I mean, I could look it up, but I'm not going to. Ladarius Henderson comes in at number 15. So a lot higher. Trying not to cough. Trying. Again, very, rated as an interior offensive lineman. Clearly, Michigan is looking to play him outside. So, yeah, he's still ranked pretty high. So I do know that some of these guys have fallen a little bit, but there have been more names added. So no more in the top 50. Michigan had multiple guys in the top 50 initially, but they're still mostly ranked. We got Josiah Stewart at 63. We got AJ Barner at number 72. He is the other one I feel is kind of a snub, right? I mean, he's in their top 75. 4-star according to 24/7 Sports. Maybe he was just outside on ESPN. We don't know. But I'm most excited about Drake Nugent and AJ Barner above probably all of the others. Am I wrong? Probably. We'll find out. Then we got a couple more here. They did 150, top 150. So now we're down into the hundreds. Miles Hinton's 120. Drake Nugent's 126. And I think that's it. Wait, we can go. I know they just re-ranked the 150, so I don't know where the other guys are. But that's the bulk of it, right? Actually, I think that was everybody except for Jack Tuttle. Makes sense that a guy who was a backup at Indiana who moved to Ann Arbor to be a backup is not going to be ranked necessarily very, very high. But that's everybody in that top, the 6 of the 7 included there. So Michigan did a really good job, really good job. So the transfer portal rankings, Michigan certainly fell out of that number 1 spot because other teams took more and took higher guys, I guess. They're sitting at 16th because you look at Colorado has 25 incoming transfers. Michigan's is the highest with the least, right? The only other school that has single digits that's ahead of Michigan, which there's 2, Florida State at number 3 with 9 and Miami with 8 at number 12. Average star ranking is, let's see, 91.56 for Florida State, 90.63 for Miami, 90.71 for Michigan. I can't sort by average star ranking, but if you did, they would be a top 10 group. Still, the fact that Michigan's ranked 16th in the transfer portal rankings, knowing how Michigan has long been, it's pretty exemplary. It's not something you normally expect, considering Michigan's not really been a go out there and get a high-profile transfer type scenario. And I believe Michigan's the top in the Big Ten, if I'm not mistaken. Still, no, Indiana actually is. They have 18. But so nonetheless, impressive for Michigan. All right. I do want to get to one other point, and that was Brad Crawford. 24/7 Sports did his top 35 coaches going into 2023. Where did he have Jim Harbaugh? Let's get to that momentarily. All right, so finish out here, just a couple more minutes talking about this 24/7 Sports ranking. Going back, I did shatter some of my own illusions, but because I went into writing the article about Brad Crawford's article under the impression that Jim Harbaugh was behind both Ryan Day and James Franklin in last year's rankings that Brad Crawford did. I was incorrect. He was ahead of both of them. He was number 6 in 2020, going into 2022. Ryan Day was 8. I don't remember where James Franklin was. But obviously coming out of 2020, yeah, he was behind at least Ryan Day. I think also James Franklin, Paul Christ, Pat Fitzgerald. I think he was behind Kirk Ferentz. Maybe he was ahead of one of those guys. But that made sense in the time. So how things have changed, and if you follow Brad's work long enough, generally you get the feeling he doesn't like Michigan. And I worked with Brad, and I generally get the feeling he doesn't like Michigan. Right? Like he going into the Ohio State game last year, he was one of many that wasn't giving Michigan a chance. Like all year long, bowl projections. Not even a chance that Michigan at 11-0 was going to find its way into the college football playoff at that time. That's like the mentality, like, nope, Rose Bowl, Rose Bowl, Rose Bowl. So things have certainly changed. So things have absolutely changed. Because now Brad Crawford has his new rankings out. And he has Jim Harbaugh as the number 3 coach in the country heading into the 2023 season. You know who the number 1 and 2 are. Surprisingly, Nick Saban is number 2, which I guess makes sense because, Kirby Smart has won back-to-back national championships. Can't fault him for that. But how things change, just even in perception and everything, and even now still, and I'm just someone covering the team, I don't feel like it's real. I don't know about you, but I often do not feel like it's like I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? Your rival fans out there saying Michigan's going to go 7-5 this year, which is insane, given, what we've talked about as being the most important things out there. You can go to my article I wrote on Sunday, which we haven't discussed here, which I very well could have one of these shows, but where I did some mathematics. I did some, it was weird. I had to do a series of like, all right, here's how much I weigh this particular thing for Michigan. 40% of 100% was returning experience. Using ESPN's returning experience, I said, all right, this is the number they gave them. Convert that into 100, convert that to 40% of it. There you go. Same thing with recruiting rankings for the composite of the last 4 years in recruiting rankings and some other things. And I determined Michigan mathematically was in the best position based off of my subjective analysis. So that makes sense. And that's even with Ohio State having a perfect score in recruiting, because naturally that's what I compared everyone else to, was Ohio State, because they've led the way each of the last 4 years. So that said, Jim Harbaugh is finally at least getting that type of, he's right there. But Brad Crawford has it right. The last sentence, he's got to win a playoff game. Didn't say he has to win it all. He has to win a playoff game. Now, will that make or break you? No. Or we talk about Lincoln Riley like he is the God's gift to coaches, right? And he hasn't won a playoff game. So sometimes you can have that, he's going to get that benefit of the doubt in ways that Jim Harbaugh won't. But Jim Harbaugh's ranked ahead of him. So there you go. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thursday will either be the mailbag, or more likely it's going to be, we have a press conference tomorrow. So with Mike Barrett, Roman Wilson, and Mike Sainris still. And then we got the basketball game. So chances are we're going to spend, time on both. And then we'll do the mailbag on Friday, because that's just how that goes. But thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll be back on Thursday. Peace.